Why are we here? What are we a part of? What is this great activity called life, of which we're just a tiny piece?
The questions don't go away. Questions that only human beings ask. Who am I? Where did I come from? What's the meaning and purpose of my existence? Do I have a soul? Does God exist? If God exists, then does God, he, she, it care about me? Why should he or she? I'm a little microbe and a piece of cheese in the junkyard of infinity.
For billions of people, religion provides answers, strength, solace, and a path of behavior. But all religions don't share the same spiritual traditions and ways of worship. All religions don't speak of a God. And there are differences between the religious traditions in the West and those of the East.
Different traditions came up with different ideas. Western society does not believe that humans are perfectible, that if we are ever going to heaven, we're going to have to get there only by the grace of God. In the East, that's your job. You have to get there. And they believe it's even possible.
In Western religions, death is really viewed as the end of our human experience. In the East, it's not considered a one-time shot. It's considered an event that may happen again and again and again.
For the West, when we think about the ultimate, we think about fulfilling every desire. That's what it takes to be happy. For Easterners, happiness means getting rid of those desires.
There's no tolerance for ambiguity in the West. And the Indian spiritual traditions say if you want to find God, then relinquish your need for certainty.
Though we live at a time when information can be shared in a split second, and each of us is exposed to diverse cultures, our religious beliefs, customs, and traditions are formed primarily by an accident of birth. If you were born in China, Thailand, or India, countries with religious traditions that are considered Eastern, you were probably raised as a Buddhist or Hindu. If you were born in France, Italy, or Iran, countries with religious traditions that are considered Western, you were probably raised as a Christian, Jew, or Muslim. But no matter how we identify ourselves, religions provide a moral framework on which our communities have come to depend.
If you look at the ideals of all religions, we all have great ideals. Not killing, not stealing, not committing adultery are common to all religions and in fact are common sense.
There are a lot of similarities between Eastern and Western religions. If you look at the words of the founders or the deep values that have lasted over centuries, very, very great similarity around the world.
Western and Eastern spiritual traditions share a fundamental belief that human beings do not live an ideal life.
Hinduism and Buddhism and the Western religions all agree about one thing, and what they agree is that life is not what it should be. In the Western traditions, that thing that is basically wrong is sin. We are sinners, and that's what's separating us from the divine. Hinduism says, no, it's not sin. It's ignorance. It's because we don't know. If only we knew how truly divine we are, our problems would be solved. In Buddhism, they say, the main problem is the fact that we desire. If we get rid of our desires, we would truly be happy. So everybody agrees there's something wrong. We just don't agree about what it is or how to get rid of what's wrong.
God our Father, we rejoice in the birth of our Savior.
For Christians, Jews, and Muslims, the core of their faith can be defined as a relationship with a single higher power, most often identified as God, and most often depicted as a father figure.
All Western traditions conceive of God as a personal figure who cares about us, who has deep concerns about us. Eastern religious thinkers do not conceive of God as a person. They conceive of him perhaps as some kind of enlightenment, knowledge, something that is attainable.
To conceive of God as male, sexist, of a particular ethnic background is in a way doing an insult to the magnificence of divinity.
In Eastern religions, typically there is not just one God, but gods are more representations of archetypal forces within the universe that may express qualities such as compassion, such as wisdom, such as love, interconnection. So the gods aren't considered the be-all and end-all, but they're aspects of what we as humans encounter in this life.
But Hindus do believe in a supreme power. They call this power Brahman. The Brahman is so large, so all-consuming, and so incomprehensible that attempting to describe it or assign any human characteristics to it is futile.
Once you give attributes to something, if you say, he's pink, or he lives in France, or he likes iced tea, you limit him. So the Brahman has to be without any qualities. But we can't think about things unless we apply qualities. That's where the gods and goddesses come in.
Since you cannot conceptualize the infinite, the gods and goddesses, they are the closest the human imagination can go to symbolically represent that infinity. And all the gods and goddesses, the deities of Hinduism, are actually symbolic expressions of expanded states of your own consciousness.
These states of consciousness are represented by more than 300 million gods and goddesses that Hindus recognize as aspects of the Brahman.
Vishnu is an aspect of the Brahman. Vishnu is the sustaining, supportive God who keeps the earth running. Brahma is the aspect of the Brahman that creates. Shiva is the aspect of the Brahman that destroys. Not destroys in a bad way, but destroys so that things can be reborn.
For most Westerners, the concept that millions of gods and goddesses represent aspects of a supreme being is difficult to either understand or accept.
We in the West, in general, we're categorizers, we're splitters. We like to separate things out. Hindus are lumpers. That's why Christians were never able to make many converts when they went to India. The Hindus would listen to the Christians and say, yes, that's very nice. Yes, we believe in Jesus. That will be fine. We'll simply add him. And the Christians would simply go mad and say, no, that's not right. We're different.
Buddhists have adopted their own distinct approach to the concept of a higher power. While they do not deny that God may exist, what role he plays in their lives is irrelevant.
One of the big questions in Western religion has always been, does God exist? In the East, you know what they say? Does reality exist? Does the world exist? They don't have questions about whether God exists. In the West, reality is what we see, touch, taste, and feel. And the more things are imbued with these qualities, the more real it is.
In the East, if you can perceive it, see it, touch it, taste it, smell it, then it's not real. Emotions come and go, perceptions come and go, bodies come and go, thoughts come and go. But the real you is the ever-present witnessing awareness, the consciousness in which all this happens.
In the East, reality is what's eternal, what's timeless, what's changeless. And therefore, reality can't be what we see, touch, taste, and feel, because these things always change.
In order to understand one little thing in my life, I have to actually understand the whole universe. This chair, for example, it came from a tree, but the tree is rainbows and sunshine and earth and water and wind and air. It's the carpenter and his life and his family and his friends. It's the factory where it was made. In order to describe any one thing, I have to describe the whole universe.
Eastern practices such as chanting, meditation, and yoga help people block out the distractions of the material world and tap into the universal connection between all things.
Every Asian tradition has different practices that the individual is encouraged to carry out. This is where the terrain of meditation comes in. So in meditation, the classical image is of someone who has shut their eyes, and in a sense that shutting of the eyes means I've gone within.
And when you still the mind, when you go beyond the secret passages and the dark alleys and the ghost-filled attics of your mind, then you enter a domain of awareness where everything is connected to everything else.
When the mind is calm, then we want to take that attention and direct it to understanding our place within the universe. Through this calm reflection, then, we can see our deep interconnection to all of life. It's a connection that really goes beyond our experience as an individual, which brings with it often a sense of feeling isolated or alone in the vastness of life. And it is this inner examination and the practices connected with it that trigger the unfolding of the heart, leading to liberation.
Meditation and chanting are offered as paths toward enlightenment, but they are not a set of commandments. They're not a doctrine. They are an invitation to each individual for self-discovery.
In Hinduism, every person is different and every person needs to make choices. They don't set you out a path that this is the way you must go. You choose your path.
You may choose different paths at different points in time, but in Eastern religions, time functions very differently.
In the West, time's linear. It's like a river. It has a starting point and it has an end point. And everything that happens in this time zone, this linear, straightforward, fast, rushing moment counts, and the river goes one way. You can only go forward. In the East, time is circular. Time's an ocean. It doesn't have any beginning or end. It has limitless depth.
The moment you try and conceptualize a beginning, you're in trouble. You see, because if you say there was a beginning, whatever the beginning was, Big Bang, so what was there before the beginning? There's an ending. Well, what's there after the ending? There are edges in space. What's there after the outermost edge? You try and figure this out, your mind will reel with bewilderment. What the Eastern philosophies say is don't get caught in this trap. Actually, the reality is transcendent.
For both Hindus and Buddhists, this timeless cycle extends to life itself.
For Western traditions, there is a huge break between life and death. People die, and then their soul or spirit goes to a different place to be reunited, possibly, with their body. In Hinduism, the idea of death is not a final one. And that's where the idea of reincarnation comes from.
Reincarnation describes the cycle of death and rebirth for all living things.
Your physical body is just recycled dust. Your body fluids are recycled water. Your breath is recycled air. Your emotions, even though you think they're your own, they're actually just energies that come and go. Don't confuse yourself with that which comes and goes. Hang on to who you really are, and it's your ticket to freedom.
In the West, sometimes the idea of rebirth takes on an appealing quality. Oh, you mean this isn't it? After this life, there will be another one? Oh boy, then I have something to look forward to. But in the East, as they really have lived with this sense of beginningless time and countless births, we see we're going to have to do this work again and again and again and again. Sometimes our circumstances may be really favorable, but at other times we may be born very poor, with health problems. We may live a life as a beggar, or someone who's mistreated from the day they're born. There's a frightening quality in the sense that that choice is out of our control.
But the choices we make in life do allow us a measure of control. In fact, there are consequences for the kind of life we live. This idea, called karma, states that the intention behind every action determines what comes back to us in this life and the next.
Can karma influence how soon we'll reach enlightenment or awakening or nirvana? The answer is yes.
It's obvious that everything we do has an effect, and the Hindus and the Buddhas both realized very early that this applied not just to the physical world, but to the spiritual world. If you do violent things, violence will come back to you sooner or later. It's simply physics on the spiritual plane.
I was giving the teaching on karma once at a session in a juvenile hall where there were about 10 young men who were incarcerated awaiting trial. I wasn't sure how the teaching on karma would go over with that group, but as I presented it, I just asked, can you relate to this teaching? And one of the young guys said, oh, you mean what goes around comes around? I said, that's it.
Like Christianity, which can trace itself back to Jesus, and Islam, which draws from the experience of Muhammad, Buddhism can trace its history back to a single founder, a prince who lived in northern India and was born more than 2,500 years ago. Siddhartha Gautama was raised in palaces, surrounded by luxury. By instruction of his father, Siddhartha was prevented from witnessing any of life's harsher realities. The story of his transformation from sheltered prince into prophet has become an integral part of Buddhism.
One day he managed to sneak out of the palace. Got his faithful charioteer, Chana, his name was, to take him to the marketplace. The sights, the sounds, the smells, the colors, it was wonderful. And all of a sudden, he saw this old man. Never seen anything like this. And he turned to Chana, he said, what's that? And Chana said, merely an old man, sire. And Siddhartha said, what do you mean? He's been around a long time. It happens to everyone. And Siddhartha said, even me? And Chana said, yeah, even you, sir. Later on, a sick person, maybe somebody with leprosy, was seen. Siddhartha said, what's that, a really old man? And Chana said, no, he's sick. What do you mean sick? People get sick. Everybody gets sick. A bit later, some corpse is borne by. Buddha said, he must be really sick. Chana said, no, he's dead. And Buddha said, well, who dies? And Chana said, everybody, including you. All of a sudden, Buddha saw this little old man on a staff, maybe had a spot or two of leprosy, singing joyfully. Buddha said, what's that? He said, oh, he has found happiness. So the Buddha realized that there had to be a way out.
With his eyes newly opened to the suffering that surrounded him, the Buddha determined that he too would set out to find the happiness that comes from knowing the true nature of reality. He returned to his palace, said goodbye to his sleeping family, and with his hair newly shorn, he abandoned his life of privilege. For the next 6 years, he lived with the ascetics, spiritual seekers who deny themselves all material comfort in the pursuit of truth. Still, the Buddha felt himself no closer to finding liberation.
He came to a certain point in his quest and he said, I want to understand the deepest truth, that can completely free my heart and mind, or I'm happy to die in that quest. He went into a profound meditation that night of deep stillness of mind. And out of that meditation, as he approached morning, there just opened up the revelation, the insight, the discovery of this untouchable level of peace, tranquility, fearlessness, unshakability that was at his very center.
He experienced all of his past lives. He knew everything that had happened. He achieved his enlightenment. He was awakened. And that's what the term the Buddha means. It means the one who is awake.
When Buddha was dying, his disciple Ananda said, "So who are you? Tell me, who are you? Are you God?" He said, "No, I'm not God." He said, "Are you a messenger from God?" He said, "No, I'm not a messenger for God." "Are you a prophet?" None of the above. So, Ananda kept persisting with Buddha. He said, "Tell me who you are." And finally, Buddha said, "I'm awake. That's all."
Awareness. Awareness is the human condition. The more aware you are, the closer you are to enlightenment.
Achieving true enlightenment was possible, according to the Buddha, if one first accepted that central to the life experience is suffering.
How long can you be absolutely perfectly happy without any thought of any dissatisfaction, slight discomfort, or unease? 2 seconds? 4? That's pushing it to my mind. But it's not very long. How often can you be suffering? How long can you suffer? A really long time. The Buddhists understood that suffering is so intrinsic to human life that we can't get away from it. This seems to Western view as a horrible, pessimistic, grim doctrine. In the Buddhist view, it's simply reality.
The source of that suffering could be traced to our own needs and desires.
You've just bought a new car. It's wonderful. It's perfect. You've worked for it for years. It gives you untold happiness. But suffering is embedded in possessing the new car because you start to worry. I hope it doesn't get a scratch on it. I better park it over here so no one will come by. You worry about it. So suffering is entailed. Even having what you want, you worry that you're going to lose it.
You don't have to give up anything. You just have to give up your attachment to everything. But you don't have to give up anything. There's this classic story which is told of 2 monks, and they're celibate monks, and they're crossing a river, and there's a beautiful girl there, and she doesn't know how to swim. So the young monk says, "I'll carry you on my shoulder." And they cross the river, he drops her off, and they go on their pilgrimage. But now the older monk has a scowl on his face, and after 8 hours, he says, "I really don't understand how you did that." He said, "Did what?" He says, "Carry that woman on your shoulder. Remember, we're celibate monks, and we're not supposed to have these kinds of relationships." And the young monk says, "I dropped her off 8 hours ago. You're still carrying her." So the carrying, the attachment is mental. It's not physical.
When a Buddhist has finally let go of attachments, let go of desires, then nirvana, everlasting freedom and true happiness, is possible. In fact, nirvana marks the end to the cycle of perpetual reincarnation. But the Western concept of heaven is entirely different than the idea of nirvana.
Heaven is a place where you are given your reward. Nirvana is a state beyond which you have any need of reward.
That dimension of utter unshakable peace is within each one of us. This is the dimension within us beyond time, beyond change, beyond death. It is that which persists when the physical body drops away. It is really that links us to life everlasting.
Hinduism and Buddhism, the 2 largest and most prominent Eastern religions, have a shared history that is centuries old. Each has influenced, borrowed from, and helped shape the other. And they've lived side by side in relative peace for generations. But in the West, spiritual traditions and religious intolerance have acted as barriers between people and have often led to violence.
Once you have an idea of chosen people, that means other people are not chosen. It becomes only a matter of sense that God favors in some way the chosen people and does not favor the infidels, the ones who are not chosen, the ones who do not believe. This leads to the kinds of persecution that we have seen throughout our Western tradition. You don't see this in India. You don't see Buddhists going around trying to kill other Buddhists because they don't believe in the same way about the Buddha.
This is really possible because in both there's a recognition no one has the ultimate truth. The belief is not the most important thing. The most important thing is peace and harmony between each of us, and are you taking the message to change your own life?
Ultimately, the intent of all religions is to help us recognize that we are all connected by our common humanity.
All these religions were based on amazing insights, but Christ wasn't a Christian, and Buddha wasn't a Buddhist, and Muhammad wasn't a Mohammedan. These were people who had access to a universal domain of consciousness.
When the ocean comes in near a beach, each wave is uniquely formed. It has its own mass of froth and foam. It breaks in a particular pattern, but they're all made out of the same ocean. It's just water. The understanding is that we are an individual wave, and we are also just part of the ocean of life. When we see that deep connection to the ocean of life, it takes away our isolation. And that's also the insight that lets us open our heart to every other being that lives.
So let's take the principles that these religions originally were founded on. And that was that we have access to a domain of awareness which is beyond our personal self, and it's so universal. And when we access that domain of awareness, we cannot help but be loving and compassionate and understanding and tolerant and forgiving.